To Pet Info Cafe. So excited to have you here and learn about do-it-yourself cat shelters. And before we start, I would like to hear about Loudoun Community Cat Coalition, your mission, and how you help outdoor cats.
Well, thanks for having us. Our Loudoun Community Cat Coalition's mission is to humanely reduce the outdoor cat population. And we do that through two programs, our Trap-Neuter-Return program, where we trap, spay and neuter, vaccinate, and microchip adult cats, and then we return them to their homes where they're living outdoors and generally have a caregiver. And the second program we have is our kitten rescue team. And when we're out doing the TNR program and we find kittens who were born outdoors, who are 12 weeks and under, they're still pretty tiny and they can be socialized. We bring those kittens in with our fosters, we socialize them, and then we adopt them out as indoor pets. So that's how the two programs combined help interrupt the breeding cycle for cats so they don't just continue to reproduce outdoors.
Well, that's true. And then speaking of outdoor shelters, how many have you rescued this year and since you started?
So this year's actually been one of our, it's a record year. We're TNRing more cats than we have in the past. Right now, we're on track to make about 550 cats this year that we will have spayed and neutered, and about 100 kittens that we've rescued after being born outdoors. And since 2015, when we were founded, all told, by the end of this year, we should be right around 4,200 cats that we have spayed, neutered, and returned. And we'll be at around 600 kittens that have been rescued and brought in and adopted as indoor pets. So if you think about the number of kittens that will not be born outdoors because we spayed and neutered the parents, it's literally hundreds of thousands of cats that won't be, forced to live that challenging life outdoors.
Those are very, very good statistics. Talking about the challenging life outdoors, can you say more about what is life like for a cat outdoors?
Yeah, it's very tough. Cats, generally about half the kittens who are born outdoors don't live past 6 months. They generally meet a traumatic end from predators or car accidents or malnutrition or disease. That it's just a very difficult life because especially when they don't have a caregiver, if they aren't fortunate enough to be born near a neighborhood or near where people know that they're living and they're not getting nutritious food, they're really scrounging and hunting and doing everything they can to get by. And the three elements of life are, food, water, and shelter. And without any one of those three, it's a very difficult life. And there are a lot of predators out there, especially for young kittens, and cats. It's just a very difficult life if they don't have people helping them along.
I agree so much, so wholeheartedly. And one of the things I've noticed in my time outdoors, taking care of colony cats and just tracking cats, is that many of them live in the storm drains.
They do, and that's we actually consider them like the smart cats because they kind of get it. That one way to avoid automobiles is to use the storm drains as travel routes. So you see a lot of that in neighborhoods when they're available. You can also escape from predators. The cats can sometimes fit through the holes and get down to the storm drains, and whatever's chasing them can't. So we do see in neighborhoods a lot of cats using the storm drains for travel routes and to get from place to place where they, because they're unowned and they're generally free roaming. You may have people on different parts of the neighborhood who are putting food out, and they think the cat lives nearby, but it could be coming from across several blocks away, just using the storm drain. And they know where their food is, they know where their shelter is, and they will go from home to home. They're very resourceful, so they find the key elements they need for survival. And if they use the storm drains, it's a much safer way to get there. They don't like to be seen. They do like to be around people. I mean, in their true nature is as a companion animal. So they like to be around people. They may not want to interact with people the way that your pet cat does in your living room, because they live with that, they know the challenges and they're fearful. But they tend to hang around because where people are, there is food, there is shelter, there is warmth, and there are people with big hearts who will help them survive.
Yes, absolutely. That's so true. So when is a good time of year, given that they're outdoors all the time? When's a good time of year to set up an outdoor cat shelter?
We recommend that people, if it's your first time putting it out, that October is a great time to do it because it hasn't
Mhm.
gotten really cold yet. It does take some time for the cats to understand that that shelter is for them. That it is a warm place. So cats are curious. If you put the shelter out in October, they will come around. They'll see it, and you want to put it normally where they hang out. If you pick a place that's 2 blocks away from where you see cats, the chances are they're not going to go find that shelter. So you put it near where they're already hanging out. They will investigate it. They may not go into it right away, but when the weather gets bad or when it gets cold or it's raining and they remember there's this little box full of straw, it looks like a really good place to lay down, they will find it and they will go in. So we recommend it October because it gives the cats a chance to find it, to get used to it. That they have to kind of burrow into the straw and bed it down to make it into a little bed for themselves. So it takes a little time to do it. We don't recommend that you bring the shelters in. So if you place them out in October, you leave them out year round because once the cats find it and start using it, they'll go back to it. And if you remove it, say during the summer months, and then put it back out in October, it's a new thing, and they're going to have to learn that whole comfort, to establish that comfort to use it again. So if you leave it out there year round, they will use it year round. They'll lay in it. It becomes their safe little secure home. It's like their little bedroom outside. So they'll go back to it. But it is important that you do your annual maintenance on it. So that, because there's straw inside and bedding for the cats, and they will be sleeping in it, every night, or especially through harsh weather. There is humidity, other things build up. So you'll have to clean it out once a year, at least once a year. We recommend doing it in the spring after the winter season. Take the straw out, put fresh straw in, check the insulation if you're using, as you'll see in the video where we talk about how to build the shelters. Sometimes there's insulation taped inside of it or between two bins stuffed in around it to keep it warm. And you want to refresh that every year in the spring. We recommend people check it again in the fall, in October again, make sure that it has fresh straw for the winter season. So there's a little bit of maintenance to be done. October is a great time to put it out. And once it's out and the cats are using it, leave it out there for them and just make sure they've got good clean bedding for the winter.
Yeah, that the maintenance is important. Don't just forget about it. But do more than one cat use a shelter?
That really depends on the cats. They're like people. Some cats who are roaming, if they aren't fortunate enough to be near a neighborhood and to interact with other cats, if they're on their own, they want to kind of be left alone. They want to be exclusive. They may not cuddle up with another cat.
Mhm.
But when you get into cats that are being fed, that have caregivers, that tend to eat together, live generally in the same area, they may be sharing decks or sheds or other places. They tend to sleep together and be close to one another, especially in the colder months when they want to share body heat. It's really important. And the cats put off a lot of heat. And if you get a couple of them together in a shelter, it can make a nice little cozy environment for them. So shelters are different sizes. If you only have one cat or two cats, you can use one of the smaller tubs, smaller Rubbermaid bins if you're going to use that style shelter. There are larger ones, and there are much larger shelters where 2 or 3 or 4 cats can cuddle together and nestle up with each other to stay warm. So caregivers generally know their cats. They kind of know which ones eat together. Sometimes they'll take turns eating and they want to stay a little bit apart. So you may need one shelter for several cats or several shelters, depending on how the cats behave. They are a very social animal, and they do, believe it or not, develop a social structure in their colonies. So caregivers generally know how many shelters they need and which cats will cuddle up together, but quite often they share space to keep warm.
Yes, that would make a lot of sense. Now, another question we have is, do wildlife try to sneak in and take over the shelter and make it their home?
Sometimes they do, and it's really difficult to keep wildlife away. As people know, if you're feeding cats, we recommend that people pick up the food at some point during the night, or feed when the cats are there and remove the food when they're gone, because wildlife are also looking for the same 3 elements of food, water, and shelter. So when you first put a shelter out, but generally just to back up a second, that wildlife generally won't take up residence in a shelter and stay there for long periods of time. They're more concerned even than cats are, because they're not really social animals with people. They won't stay in one place for a very long time, especially when they know that a person is coming to visit occasionally. So they might stop and check into a shelter for a night or a couple of nights to stay warm, and then they're going to move along. And also, once the cats are using the shelter and it's established and the cat's fur is in there and their scent is in there, most wildlife, unless it's a predator, they're not going to take up residence in a shelter and potentially, fight with the cat over the living quarters. Usually once a cat's in there, their scent's in there, it's being used a lot, wildlife will they might check it out, but they probably won't go inside. They'll feel, they don't really want to pick a fight with the cat, and cats don't want to pick fights with wildlife. So we have had shelters where we had a possum actually get into one of the shelters that I was maintaining. And I took the roof off to put some straw in there, and this little possum just looked up at me. So I put the lid back on, and the next day he was gone, and the cat moved back in again. So it does happen from time to time, but it generally isn't a long-term problem.
I got it. And possums are really very friendly animals. They do us some good because they eat ticks and they're really not aggressive. So looks like he recognized your good handiwork.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to see the video that you had made. And do you have any other thoughts about shelters and outdoor cats?
Just a couple of things. When if you're going to be providing shelters for cats, there are a lot of different styles of shelters, and we've got some of those in the video, and we talked about those. Kind of get the right size shelter for your cat. You don't want a huge opening on it. The objective is to keep the cats out of the wind and the elements like freezing rain or snow. So you want to make sure that the shelter doesn't have a gigantic opening on it. You also don't want really large animals to easily walk in and scare the cat. So small entrances that are right sized for your cat, the amount of space inside. And the key thing is make sure there's a lot of straw in the shelters that they can bed in, and good insulation around it. And also make sure the shelters are placed about an inch or two off the ground. So on top of a couple of boards or bricks or something like that. The objective is, if you think about a shelter that you'd want to live in as a human, cats really love the same things that people do. So make sure it's warm, watertight, and out of the wind, not in the direct wind, and your cat will be happy.
That's just all very great advice, and we're really looking forward to seeing the video, and thanks to Loudoun Community Cat Coalition.
Hey y'all, it's Tom with Loudoun Community Cat Coalition, and we're doing some shelter building today. And we've got a new product we're using for insulation. It was just donated to us. And now that we're trying it out, I'm kind of excited about it. I think it's really nice. And so let me show you what we're doing here. We have our kit here, which is a large Rubbermaid bin, which will be our outside bin. And it is the 30-inch bins, roughly 29 inches. And then there's a smaller bin that's going to sit inside of it. The smaller bins are the 23-inch wide bins. They probably have gallon measurements, but I don't know what they are. And so these sheets in here are the insulation that we're using. And I'll show you what they look like. They come in these 4-foot strips that are bagged. And then this is what they look like on the inside. It's really nice, fibrous insulation. If you look at it, it's about an inch and a half, inch and 3/4 thick. And it's very warm. It's like the stuff that's inside coats. We get it from a volunteer who works at a bakery, a bake shop, and they get their supplies shipped to them in cardboard boxes that are insulated with these big 4-foot strips of insulation. So the way I'm making these shelters is I'm just laying one strip across the bottom, like so, and then wrapping one around the outside edge, like this. And then and then I cut little strips and I pack them in here on either side, above and below. And then I'll show you the one that I just built. And then you can see the gap in between here, between the two bins. I'm just putting black duct tape so it holds all the insulation in. And then I duct tape the lid all the way around so that it doesn't pop off and stay shut. And then the inside hole of this one, the whole inside will be filled with straw for bedding. So that's going to go inside of the smaller bin here. And we got our bale of straw right here. This insulation I think is going to work out really well. It's very clean. It's easy to fit it in there. You cut it with a pair of scissors, sharp scissors, or you can use a carpet knife or something, but I'm using scissors. It doesn't make a big mess like trying to pack straw between these two shelters. And then I can save the straw and just fill it on the inside hole when I get to the site where we're going to put the shelters out for the cats. And hopefully we can keep some cats warm this winter. Thanks a lot.